Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, all U.S. Constitution protects all lives matter members out there and their families. And good morning to our dear President Donald Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance. Keep up the good work. You're doing a great job. This day today is a very good day to talk about the weaponization that Barack Hussein Obama and Joe Biden did to the judicial system. Mainly, the majority of the judges, and I'd say 99% of the judges that Barack Hussein Obama and Joe Biden appointed, all were appointed with one ideology and one motive, was to rewrite and circumvent the Separation of Powers Act and to rewrite the history of the United States of America's judicial system and circumvent Congress to restructure Title 18 and other titles to protect the U.S. constitutional vested rights of every citizen born in the United States of America. Ladies and gentlemen, court rulings, a judge, a district court judge, is bound by law and oath of office and ethics under ABA Code of Ethics to employ a Circuit Court of Appeals ruling, a U.S. constitutional vested right, and overall a landmark decision or a decision made by the United States Supreme Court, which is the law of the land and is the breaking point and settles a dispute when the circuit and the district, conflict with each other. Their job is to make that decision, who's right and who's wrong. And if they're both wrong, the decision is put in place by the individual United States Supreme Court justices, which is called a landmark decision. Just like the Daubert-Frye test, the mailbox rule under Rule 4, Houston versus Lack. The Daubert-Frye test is Daubert versus Merrill Pharmaceuticals. And also the individual perjury use at trial, Napier versus Illinois, dating all the way back to 1959. The Landano case versus U.S. Department of Justice, dealing with the evidence under Title V, which is an open government. A person has a right to refute any documents within a file that is used to draw an adverse decision towards you, a right to earn wages, and not to be maintained in your file if false and inaccurate, if they did not authenticate such through an independent outside source. All these rulings that have been made against Donald Trump or Trump's organizations within the government, that's what they keep calling them. Ladies and gentlemen, Donald Trump is the President of the United States. Just like George Washington was the President of the United States. He's one of the founding fathers of this country. We have a U.S. Constitution which must be followed verbatim to the letter of the law, not to one's interpretation. The interpretation of the law is to be followed the way Congress enacted and the President signed that bill into law. A ruling from the Supreme Court is to be followed the way the individual Supreme Court justices decided and drafted that opinion and put that on paper and in the law books. Such has to be followed. When you deviate from that, you violate the law. These judges that were appointed by Barack Hussein Obama and Joe Biden are clearly violating the law and their ABA code of ethics. The Senate Judiciary Committee has the power and has the authority to impeach them if such behavior keeps on going. And it's funny, the majority of these judges are female judges. I don't know why the Evita Peron syndrome has infected and infiltrated the government of the United States of America. But as you know, Patrisse Cullors, Rosa Opal, and a whole host of other women called the Squad are pushing for a womanly takeover of the United States government, as long with a communist regime. Their communist movement has become the Democrats. They should be called, the Democrats need to change their name like they want to change the history of the United States government. They should be called the Communist Working Party, because they're working to undermine the U.S. Constitution. They're working to take your civil rights away. And they're working to overthrow the United States government. They have successfully split this country apart under the Obama-Biden administrations. Donald Trump is pushing to bring our country back together as a whole United Nations. And as you see, ladies and gentlemen, when you have people admit that they're communist-trained organizers, as Black Lives Matter did, that organization, incorporated in Oakland, California, raped, robbed, and pilfered numerous companies and corporations throughout the world, raped, robbed, and pilfered the blue-collar worker, all under the guise of helping America, helping the poor. The only thing we've seen was mansions being built with airplane strips and hangars, helicopters, exuberant salaries, $1.25 billion being awarded and signed off by Barack Hussein Obama in 2008, and signed off also by Eric Holder to INRI, Black Farmers Asset Litigation Act, filed in Washington, D.C. The Italian-American enclaves have been attacked and disassembled by the United States Department of Justice under the Obama administrations, Biden administration. The Italians were hung in multiple amounts also during the 1800s. We did not get no reparation for that. The only thing they gave the Italians was Senator McLaughlin, quoting him, was the RICO Act. We need to pass this bill. We'll break the backs of these Italians, quote unquote. That's in the Senate transcript. And that bill, ladies and gentlemen, is the start of the amoeba within the government. That shows you and proves to you back then and now, with the secret memos under the Obama-Biden administrations being passed around about Italian-American Roman Catholic U.S. Department of Justice employees being targeted for their ethnic and religious background. This is true. This is factual. And the use of top echelon rats, which early on was under the, the J. Edna era, which Greg Scarpa Sr. worked for and kidnapped the Mississippi burning people. And a whole host of murders conducted by people close to his inner circle, who later became government top echelon rats. And unfortunately, Mike Lloyd, another one, working in the penitentiary, trying to get his life sentence away. Try to have a U.S. Navy veteran doing Navy time, being housed in the federal system, assassinated by a group of Mexicans within the prison, which luckily were friends of that individual U.S. Navy veteran. And then the person who saved his life was later on targeted by the same top echelon rats within the Mexicans organization and was attacked. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is sad to say the amoeba has to be stopped. And it almost destroyed the government. You know, an amoeba eats at a body until there's no more protein, and then it dies off. Just like Barack Hussein Obama, Biden, and Black Lives Matter Movement Incorporated. They were fleecing the U.S. Treasury and major companies until there's no more funds. Then you go bankrupt. That's the amoeba. But the computer hackers today that are being employed by these communist-led organizations as Black Lives Matter Incorporated and other groups are proof beyond a reasonable doubt that Barack Hussein Obama and Joe Biden, as we've seen hundreds of millions of dollars, is in their coffers. But they want to choose to jump on Donald Trump and his family. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we can go back and forth all day. But the truth of the matter is, the Italian Americans today are prime example. Asians and Asian Americans today are prime example of the attack on an ethnic group and the disassembling of the Italian American enclaves or neighborhoods surrounding the United States of America by uses of treachery, trickery, and also putting in top echelon rats to cause strife in between different groups. We know this as a fact, and the use of Kodak packs, Project M, and COINTELPRO is their tools. As we've seen in Rizzoli versus FCI Allenwood et al., 225 Fed 3rd, 650, 3rd Circuit, 2001, and U.S. versus Rizzoli, 2012 CR 550, Southern District of New York, tried before Denise Coate and prosecuted by Damian Williams, then AUSA, under the Obama, Eric Holder administrations, and Biden as vice president. This was all to cease and desist the individual use of Project M and exposing COINTELPRO in the Federal Bureau of Prisons, which did come out, and where many Italian Americans were targeted, as Kevin Rizzoli was, a U.S. Navy veteran, being housed in the Federal Bureau of Prisons. So again, ladies and gentlemen, adhere to what I say. Look, listen, and observe, and look up. The proof is there in front of you. These court cases to back up what I say. There's congressional law policies to back up what I say. There's acts to be backed up what I say. Where are the videotapes missing in my trial? Where is the perjury being condoned, being brought out in my 2 Bronx trials? 2016 BX 026017 was consolidated. 2 trials, ladies and gentlemen, and I was denied trial by jury, a 7th Amendment vested U.S. constitutional right. And both judges agreed and it was a failure for a right to compete in the Hunts Point terminal market, which also violates the human rights laws of these New York City and New York State. So again, ladies and gentlemen, we have standing, and Civil RICO standing at that, under Diaz versus Gates, 420 Fed 3rd, 894, 9th Circuit 2005, which this landmark decision was cited New York state law governing Civil RICO as their foundation for their opinion. Pedraza versus Carrero, 212 AD 2nd. You get the page. 3rd Department, 1995. But it's being bogged down in an appeal because of my medical conditions, my surgeries, being on medication that causes me to sleep and not being in the right state to think properly because I'm representing myself. So again, ladies and gentlemen, we the people for the people will prevail. And they can laugh all they want, because I'm going to laugh all the way to the bank like they laughed under the INRI Black Farmers Asset Litigation Award of $1.25 billion. Thank you very much. Have a beautiful day. God bless you. God bless Christopher Columbus. God bless our founding fathers of this country. God bless our U.S. military. May they be safe, both domestically and abroad, as tensions heat up on both shores. On both shores. Because we are in dire straits, ladies and gentlemen. People need to wake up and see the truth. God bless you all.